Hey everybody, thank you for stopping by again to tune in to this video. There's so many things that I really want to ultimately talk about, but for this one I want to focus on giving some more details and clarity into how I discovered this tumor in my chest, how, the series of events that led up to me finding this out. But I want to say that, first of all, I am absolutely amazed at how much attention, specifically the videos of me in the hospitals, how much coverage and how much attention they've got. I never thought in a million years that so many people would have seen it, but I'm really thankful that they have, and I hope that many more do, because although it's pretty rare that somebody's going to be in the same situation that I was, I think I've only had 2, maybe 3 people reach out and say that they've had the same type of tumor or a tumor in their chest, period. So it's not like it's all that common, but the experience definitely is common. When I was in the ICU, it was filled with people that were having, work done on their heart, maybe a heart transplant, replacement of a valve, something of that nature, lung cancer, lung disease, lungs being taken out, pieces of lungs being taken out. The ICU was absolutely filled. There was not an empty bed the entire time. It was a decent-sized hospital, so it kind of amazed me that there was that many people in there for that same type of thing. So while this specific disease is not that common, the experience, the things that are going to happen, the pain, the medicine, the delirium, those things are common. So to me, I think it's important that it gets some coverage, right? Because this isn't something that's talked about by a lot of people. Most people keep it kind of secret and private, and I understand why. Totally understand why. But in the lead up to going in for this major surgery, I definitely wish that there would have been something out there, something more that I could have seen that maybe would have prepared me for what was to come. Whether it was the ventilator, the breathing tube, or the type of pain that I was going to be in from this type of procedure, whatever the case may be, I would have appreciated seeing something more than what I did. Because I think that maybe some things that I experienced could have gone a little bit differently had I, been exposed to some of that prior. So while there is so many things that I want to cover, for this one, we're going to talk about the discovery and the lead up of this whole situation. So how did this really start? This started in really probably in October. If you really look at the fine symptoms, it probably could have went a couple years back. But it really started to take effect in October of 2022. I had this horrible nagging cough right here in my chest. It was dry. There wasn't any kind of mucus. Nothing was being produced. It was just this terrible nagging cough. I didn't have a fever. I didn't really have any other symptoms except for maybe a headache, probably from coughing my lungs out for days and days and days on end. So in October, it was right around Halloween, I went to an urgent care and they did their tests and everything basically came back negative. And they said, hey, it looks like you've got bronchitis, so we're going to give you a round of antibiotics. You're going to take that for a few days, a week, whatever it was. And if it doesn't get better, come back and see us. So I took the Z-Pack, I took the medicine, whatever antibiotics it was. It seemed to have made things better, but the cough never truly went totally away. Instead of coughing every 5 seconds, totally uncontrollably, maybe it was only 10 to 20 times a day. So it definitely never went totally away. And I think it's very interesting that during this whole series of events, personally, I'm a side sleeper, And when I would sleep on my right-hand side, I would cough, and I just couldn't help it. But if I were to lay on my back or on my left-hand side, it was reduced enough to where I could fall asleep. But there were definitely times when I would wake up coughing kind of uncontrollably again. So cough medicine, cold medicine, vitamins, none of those things really helped it. So around sometime in late November, early to mid-December, it's kind of rearing its ugly head again, and I'm getting to the point where I'm coughing uncontrollably again. So back to the urgent care I go. There, it was connected to the hospital and the hospital system, and that's a place that had a lot of imaging equipment. So it was a legit urgent care that I was going to. And once again, they're like, "Oh, okay, well, let's try another round of antibiotics. It's not COVID, it's not the flu, it's not anything like that. Let's try that, see if we can knock it out. We'll be a little bit more aggressive this time, and hopefully it'll go away." So again, I follow the instructions. The cough gets better, but it never totally disappears, which, I mean, we're 2 to 3 months in at this point, and it's incredibly frustrating that it still hasn't gone away. So we get through Christmas. I seem to remember that during Christmas I felt miserable. Just coughing my head off. It just never stopped. It was unrelenting. It was just miserable that you just can't stop coughing. So obviously something's going on, but I don't know. I've never really been the type to go to the doctor for every little thing. So I thought, just like most everything else, I'll fight through it and I'll heal. That's just what my body's done. It's always been strong. I've always had a good immune system. So I thought, I'll just fight through it. No big deal. So fast forward to January. The early to middle part of January is when my brother-in-laws, we take our yearly annual January hike. And it's chilly up there. We get a lot of wind. It's usually snowing, or it's a very cold, miserable rain. So anyway, I'm not going to miss out on this hike. This is like a once a year thing. It's 3 days. I'm not going to miss it for the world. It's wonderful. It's so good where we go because there's no cell phone service. It's very desolate. So to be able to unplug and be in a rustic environment, disconnected from everything, it's wonderful because it kind of resets my brain. Looking back on it now, it's kind of terrifying because we don't have cell phone service, and if something would have happened then, you'll see more in a minute, if something would have happened then, it could have been disastrous for me and could have been a really nasty situation. But we did our hike, and on our way out that morning, we packed everything up and we were headed back out. My backpack was right around 60 pounds. I think it was a hair over 60 pounds, which is insane. That was almost double what I would normally take. But this year I decided that I am not going to freeze to death. I had extra things to keep me warm. I had some extra food. I came prepared. So 60 something pounds is what my backpack was, that I was carrying basically straight uphill, straight up a mountain for around 4 to 5 miles to get back to the truck. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm the model of fitness, but I've always been in pretty decent shape. I've usually done physical work for a living my entire life. So it was very odd to me and very unusual that I was really falling behind. It seemed like the other two were just running up the mountain, and here I was crawling. I was taking tons of extra breaks just to try to catch my breath, to try to get my heart rate under control, because it was spiking super high. I don't remember what the numbers were now, but my heart rate was up there. So I'm sure my blood pressure was through the roof, because every time I would stop, I'd kind of hunch over to try to get the weight of the backpack off of my shoulders and kind of put it more on my back. So I'd hunch over to try to, catch my breath, get my heart rate down, which it never really did all that much, not like it normally would. But every time I would do that, I'd black out. Not enough to where I'd fall over or something like that, but, tunnel vision comes in and everything just goes black. That was kind of scary, especially being out, disconnected away from everything and not having cell phone signal for a couple miles. But I'm a fighter, right? So let's fight through this. Let's just get to the truck. I'll get home. I'll get rested. I came out here before I was totally healed from my bronchitis, right? So that's the issue. Let's just get me home and I'll rest it up and I'll be good. About a week later, after getting home from the hike, I was on my way to work. It was a Monday morning, and I was on my way to work, and that whole weekend prior, I was coughing absolutely uncontrollably. So my lungs, my throat, my diaphragm, everything was just so stiff, so sore, so tensed. It was unreal for the whole weekend. And Monday morning, I guess I kind of snapped because I was on my way to work and I said, I've had absolutely enough of this. I'm going back to the urgent care. I'm going to see what they can do. Maybe give me yet again more antibiotics or whatever it is. I need to get this under control to where I can at least make it through the workday. I need to make sure that I'm not having something that I can give to my coworkers because, even though we're kind of far beyond COVID and all that crap, health and being sick is still something that most workplaces are kind of tense about, right? So I just wanted to make sure that I'm not bringing anything into work that could get somebody else sick. So I get there, the urgent care opened at 8 o'clock, and I'm sitting in their parking lot at 7:15. I said, okay, well, I'm not the type to be late for work. I'm not the type to miss work for, I don't feel good, my stomach hurts. Like, I still go to work. I got to make a living. I got to feed the family. I got to keep the lights on, groceries in the fridge, all that stuff. It's blue-collar life, the American dream. So living that life, I've worked through everything. So I just said, I texted my coworkers and I said, hey, I'm going to be just a little bit late getting in today. I've got to stop at the urgent care and make sure that, I'm okay, that I'm not going to bring you guys anything, whatever. So I get there and I'm the first one in the door. I sign in. I tell them what's going on. And a guy comes in right behind me for his scheduled DOT physical. No big deal. That's one guy. A few more people come in with their sick kids. They're obviously out of school. The guy for the physical got called back before I did. Okay, that's fair. He's got an appointment. I don't. I'm going to walk in, even though I'm the first one here. Hopefully I'll get seen soon and I won't miss much of my workday. Long story short, some crazed, I guess a crackhead or something, I don't know what to call it. He was definitely either on something or he was coming down off of something. He came in and he was basically wanting to get seen and get some drugs and get out of there. And he was not polite to the staff. He was causing all kinds of a commotion in the waiting room. The police got called. I say all this because I should have been seen right away, but I actually didn't get seen until about 10 a.m. And during that 2-hour span, again, I'm trying to rush to get to work. During that 2-hour span, I thought to myself probably at least a dozen times, I need to just leave, get out of here. This is taking way too long. I'll just try to make it through the day and I'll come back later. No big deal. something in me told me to stay. And I don't know what it is. I call it a God thing because sometimes, God does things well beyond our understanding, especially in that moment. And the cards were stacked against me, but I stayed. Something told me to stay. So I finally get called back around 10 a.m. She says, okay, sure, bronchitis sounds correct, but if you will, I'm not forcing you to, I'm not telling you to, but I would recommend that we at least take an x-ray to make sure that you don't have pneumonia. She'd already listened to my lungs. She had taken my blood pressure, which was out the roof, but it was easily dismissed as, oh, you've been nonstop coughing, you're in pain, you haven't slept, your blood pressure's high, right? So all of my symptoms throughout this entire time seemed like normal, run-of-the-mill type stuff. Nothing ever screamed, oh, hey, you've got a huge tumor in your chest, you're about to die. Nothing like that ever happened. So it was, it's just wild to me now. So she takes the x-ray and I get sent back to my room. I figure, well, I've waited this long. Another 5-10 minutes won't hurt. Shouldn't take that long to develop the film and have her look at it and say, oh yeah, of course there's no pneumonia. Here's your medicine, have a nice day. Well, I waited, and I waited, and I waited some more. About 30 minutes go by, and by this time I'm growing rather irritated, and I've thought about leaving again prior to getting the x-ray back, probably 3 or 4 times. After about 45 minutes after the x-ray, she finally comes in, and she says, hey, please stay calm. I don't want to alert you or upset you. Your blood pressure is already up there enough. We don't need it to get any higher from stress or anything like that. But I want you to come to my office to take a look at your x-ray. Okay, sure. So we walk to her office and she shows me the x-ray and I see the lungs. Or at least, I can at least point that much out, but all this other blob of mess I couldn't really understand. And she says, this area right here is supposed to be your heart, but it's severely enlarged. And again, I'm not trying to upset you, but you could be in cardiac arrest at any moment. So we really need to get you to the emergency room, like, immediately. Wait, what? Whoa, okay. I feel fine. I don't feel like I'm about to have a heart attack or something like that, but then again, I don't know what one feels like. So, sure, I'll go to the emergency room right now. I'm kind of confused at this point because it doesn't really make sense. I would have thought that I would feel sick, I would feel ill, and I did. I'm coughing like crazy, but it's just a cough. It's not, my heart's not about to explode or something like that, right? So she prints the x-ray off on a CD, and she says, here, I want you to take this to the emergency room. They need to compare it to whatever scan they do. Okay, sure. So I leave out of there, and I'm trying to hurry up and call my wife, text my boss, my coworker, say, hey, slight change of plans here. I'm going to the emergency room. I'm not coming into work. So I finally get a hold of my wife, and we decide that we're going to meet up at the emergency room. And we get there, and they do some scans, they do some tests, and they're just kind of scratching their head. They don't really know what's going on. They definitely saw that my heart was enlarged, but there was a few of them that weren't really convinced that it was indeed my heart. So from the emergency room, we stayed there pretty much all day. And then they finally admitted me to the hospital. And then that night, later that night, around midnight, I was transferred to the larger hospital within their hospital system. And that's ultimately where I stayed and had my surgery. That's kind of ultimately the series of events that happened leading up to my hospital admission. And I say those things are a God thing because, again, it's not my nature whatsoever to be out of work, to be late, to all these little things, all these little times where I just wanted to go and said, it's no big deal, whatever. This little voice in the back of my head just said, stay. And then also the God thing being the fact that the nurse at the urgent care, she decided to take an x-ray when nobody else did these other 3 or so times that I had went to get checked out. Something convinced her to take an x-ray. I don't know what. Again, I call that a God thing, because it would have been very easy for her to just say, okay, here's a Z-Pack, have a nice day, which she kind of did, but she wanted me to take the x-ray. I didn't have to agree to it, and I really didn't want to, but again, this nagging little voice in the back of my head told me to do it. So, whether this is your belief or not, I hope that one day God intervenes in your life the way that he did in mine. Hopefully not for the same type of reason. I wouldn't wish this upon anybody else. I wouldn't wish this experience upon anybody else, because it's been absolutely horrible. But I hope that he shows himself in the same way that he's shown himself to me. I've made my fair share of mistakes in life, but throughout the past couple of years, I've, for the most part, grown a lot closer to God and in my faith. And I'm fully convinced that the closer you get to him, the more you're tested and attacked. And this couldn't be more true in this situation, because I was literally on my deathbed and I didn't even know it. Doctors were amazed that I was still living and breathing, which, again, to me was a total shocker, because I never in a million years would have thought that something that serious was going on. That's just not me. Nothing exciting really ever happens in my life. So all these little miracles added up in the way that they did, and I wouldn't change this whole experience for nothing. I really wouldn't, because I've learned so much through it, and I've grown so much through it. But all these little miracles happened, and it literally saved my life. Because had I not gone to the urgent care that morning, or had I left before I got seen, or had I decided, no, I don't want the x-ray, just give me the antibiotics and I'll be on my way, any one of those things happening, I'm dead. I'm not here today making this video. So it's undeniably an absolute miracle. And obviously I'm very thankful that things worked out the way that they did. One comment that I see that keeps coming up is people say, oh, well, shame on the urgent care that you went to first for not doing imaging and seeing this and catching this. It could have been so much easier if they would have found it, 3 months ahead of when it was ultimately found. The bad news is it wouldn't have changed the diagnosis or the surgery or what had happened at all. The only thing that would have changed was the timeline. This would have been happening at the end of 2022 instead of the beginning of 2023. This is a long, slow-growing tumor. It may have been ever so slightly smaller in October, November, December than it was in January. Highly unlikely that anything would have been different whatsoever. The only thing that would have been different was I would have avoided so many close calls with death. So things happen for a reason. They truly do. And I don't know what else in this life that I have to contribute to the world or what job I have left to do, but I feel like God's placed it in the back of my mind, and I can't ignore it because it keeps nagging at me that this testimony I have to share. I have to talk to people, get it out to the world. Maybe, just maybe, it'll make a difference in somebody's life one day. I don't know. Whether it's a religious or a spiritual thing or not, really my hope is that somebody that's going to go through something similar to this can maybe see this and get something from this one day. And maybe it helps them. Maybe it helps prepare them for what's coming. Again, we'll talk more later in other videos about things like the ventilator, things like what it's like to hallucinate on all these drugs that I was on, the surgery itself, the leaving the hospital and the life after the hospital. the pain that's associated with it, the lack of sleep, the drugs, everything that comes with that. These are things that people don't talk about a lot, but I think it needs to be out there. So that's really my desire, is to share this story and hope that it helps somebody one day. But anyway, that's all for now. Hope everybody had a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Healthy being the key thing. Thank you for watching yet again. Hope to speak with you soon. Again, please feel free to share your comments, share your stories, whether it helps me or not. Somebody someday will read it, and maybe it'll help them. So we're all a part of this message, and I feel that that's important because it's not just one voice. There's many voices that are reiterating some of the things that I say, or maybe they have a different take. Whatever the case may be, it's equally important to the story. So feel free, comment. I love reading them, and I try to respond to each and every one. But thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.